Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. President Trump says some parts of the country could reopen soon, but that decision is now up to the state governors. We'll hear what Montana's is saying about that in just a moment. But first, Skylar Henry is at the White House, where the president also announced a major step against the World Health Organization.
President Trump says the U.S. will freeze funding to the World Health Organization, pending an investigation.
So much death has been caused by their mistakes. We will continue to engage with the WHO to see if it can make meaningful reforms.
The president also announced what he calls a dynamic ventilator reserve, a ventilator sharing program among hospitals nationwide.
Within the last several days, more than 20 of our nation's largest health systems have already pledged more than 4,000 ventilators should we need them.
The president is seeking the advice of his advisors and a broad spectrum of business and labor leaders on a plan to reopen the country. He now says the decision will be made in conjunction with each state.
I will then be authorizing each individual governor of each individual state to implement a reopening and a very powerful reopening plan of their state at a time and in a manner as most appropriate.
The president also slammed congressional Democrats on Twitter, demanding they replenish the Paycheck Protection Program now.
The program, the PPP, is going to be out by this week, maybe by Thursday or Friday. So we could use the $250 to complete that program.
Democrats say they will not budge from their push to include more money for states and hospitals, on top of the request for an additional $250 billion for the popular small business loan program. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell issued a statement saying there is no time to insist on sweeping renegotiations or ultimatums. Skylar Henry, CBS News, the White House.
The Treasury Department says it's reached an agreement with 10 U.S. air carriers on a payroll support program as well. Well, despite recent criticism from Montana Republican legislative leaders, Governor Steve Bullock says what Montana is doing is working and he's not rushing to open things up again. The governor released a breakdown of the cases so far, which shows that travel cases contributed to the majority of the first cases across Montana. The majority of those cases so far, 20%, are people ages 20 to 29 years old. And the breakdown is showing 50% male and 50% female. The governor says we got a head start, and what we're doing now will help us open our state sooner.
I know that Montanans are hurting, and especially financially. But I also don't want to put us in a worse position than we already find ourselves in trying to get a hold of this virus. Compared to surrounding states that took lesser actions, we have a significantly lower rate of infection per capita. South Dakota has a rate per capita of about 3 times what Montana does.
Montana Republicans sent a letter to the governor this morning encouraging him to rethink his directives, including lifting restrictions in counties with no COVID-19 cases. Half of Montana counties still do not have a confirmed COVID-19 case. Well, a decision on whether students will return to class this year has not been made. Yesterday, Governor Bullock said he wasn't ready to write off the school year just yet. That's something I asked Billings School Superintendent Greg Upham about today.
And I know it's his decision, not yours, but if it was your decision, what would you do at this point?
You know, that's almost a $64,000 question, and walking through it with our people, I think it's in the best interest for us to probably finish the year out in a virtual format to the best of our ability. I say that with some reservation. I like the way the governor referenced the science and data as the guidance in this, and I think we have to follow that too. You know, we have 17,000 students in Billings Public Schools with 33 schools, and so it's difficult to keep social distancing in a school. It's almost an oxymoron. So I'm probably leaning more toward let's finish out in this manner and start next fall to the best of our ability.
Now, Upham did say the social part of returning to school would be significant for some students and teachers, but the main concern, he said, is safety. Ideas are still being considered for this year's graduation, which Upham says will not happen in person during the time frame of this school year. The COVID-19 crisis is putting extra pressure on organizations that help the poor and homeless. Billings St. Vincent de Paul is asking for help from the community in packing sack lunches to feed Billings' homeless population. They are now giving out around 120 meals a day. Before COVID-19, that number was closer to 70. Q2's Mitch Legge spoke with staff there and with people at a Billings restaurant that is lending a hand.
The Billings St. Vincent de Paul has cut its normal 21-member staff down to just 3 and has seen more families with laid-off parents coming through its doors. It needs the help from the community to help prepare sack lunches for the homeless and those in need.
What we're seeing is just really an increase in new faces, couples with children. So we're seeing really a kind of a different demographic coming through our doors that we've not seen. And when you're talking to these folks, you're learning that maybe mom or dad have been laid off from work.
Bartle said St. Vincent de Paul has remained open through COVID-19, usually offering lunch at its First Avenue South location and a sack lunch dinner that people can take with them. If people are at home preparing meals, all food should not be able to spoil in the heat. That means no mayonnaise or meat on sandwiches. Instead, peanut butter and jelly is a good option. And a bottle of water is also recommended to be included, along with soft fruits like oranges and bananas. Restaurant staff at the Bull Mountain Grill in the Billings Heights put in work to fill about 100 sack lunches yesterday.
We don't feel like we deserve anything unless we can give out to the community and try to help them too. And they've definitely, the community's shown their support for us in a huge way over the last 3 weeks. And we just want to give back, and it feels good to be able to try to help wherever we can.
Now, Schaefer said that the Bull Mountain Grill has had to lay off more than half of its staff members. She said that delivery and takeout options have kept the restaurant afloat during this time. She added that the restaurant staff would like to help out St. Vincent de Paul as much as possible. Reporting at home in Billings, Mitch Legge, MTN News.
All right, thank you, Mitch. And monetary donations can also be given through the St. Vincent de Paul website. Well, a meatpacking operation in Sioux Falls, South Dakota has shut down after more than 300 workers tested positive for COVID-19. Smithfield Foods plant processes up to 5% of America's pork, services grocery stores throughout a multi-state region. In a statement, the company's president warns that the plant's closure is pushing our country perilously close to the edge in terms of our meat supply. There are 550 independent producers that supply Smithfield with hogs. South Dakota's governor recommended that the plant remain shut down for at least 14 days. Well, the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases is up by 5, all of those right here in our area. The state's latest numbers, released every morning, show 399 cases. Of the 5 new cases in Montana, 4 of those are here in Yellowstone County and the 5th is in Bighorn County. The state says 197 people have recovered and 7 people have died. In Wyoming tonight, there are now 282 confirmed cases, the most cases in Laramie County at 62. Well, last month, several U.S. senators came under intense scrutiny when it was revealed that they significantly altered their investments after a private January briefing by federal officials about the coming coronavirus crisis. Now, Montana senators were not part of that briefing, but tonight, MTN's Mike Dennison takes a closer look at the investment actions of Montana's entire congressional delegation.
Republican Senator Steve Daines' office says he's made no stock transactions this year of more than $1,000. And Democratic Senator John Tester's office says he's made no investment changes this year. Most of their transactions must be reported within 30 days of occurring, and neither senator has made any filings this year. Their next personal financial disclosure report is due next month on May 15th. Republican Congressman Greg Gianforte, who's running for governor, has made more than 200 investment transactions this year. But his campaign says Gianforte's wealth is managed through a blind investment agreement, with a manager making the decisions without Gianforte's knowledge or input. Gianforte's transactions included stock purchases of several drug companies that have worked on coronavirus-related projects, such as the Swiss firm Roche Holdings or a Japanese firm Chugai Pharmaceutical. Those buys have prompted political opponents to accuse Gianforte of profiting from the outbreak. The campaign of Montana Attorney General Tim Fox, who's opposing Gianforte in the 3-way Republican gubernatorial primary, went so far as to say Gianforte is profiting from insider trading. Gianforte's campaign declined to respond directly to these allegations. Instead, it said he had no prior knowledge of the trades and that there are only 10 transactions out of more than 200 made by his independent investment manager. Those other investment purchases and sales with Gianforte's money ran the gamut, in everything from bank stocks to bonds that are helping build a school in Dillon, Montana. Montana's delegation also say they didn't get any detailed briefings on the coronavirus outbreak until late February, well after the meeting that led to the accusations against the other senators. In Helena, I'm Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Gianforte's transaction reports for his investments are filed with the U.S. House Clerk's office, and they are available online. All right, turning to Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire. And Bob, it's calm out there right now, but you say it may not stay that way.
Yeah, we're looking at something a little upstream up by Great Falls. It could be some morning snow showers for us. Let me show you Doppler radar. You can see earlier on today, we basically had some scattered rain showers all around the Billings area. Now, that stuff is either moved on or headed in towards the Pryor Mountains where it's turned into snowfall. But look up there by Great Falls and Havre. That's your next batch of moisture moving in. That's your new cold front, and that's forecast to make its way into the region. And take a look at this. As you'll notice, we do have a lot of watches and warnings to talk about, especially across much of western Montana around the mountains. That's a winter weather advisory in purple, looking for various snowfall amounts ranging in there from 1 to 4 inches in the lower elevations, up to 10 inches in some of the mountains. Area in pink, that is a winter storm warning up in the Beartooth and the Crazy Mountains. Could see 10 to 16 inches of snow there. Down by southern Bighorn County, maybe 3 to 5 inches of snow in that area. Here in the Billings area, you'll notice they're not on the map. That's because most of the stuff is going to slide to our west, and we're looking at maybe a little rain or maybe a couple of flurries in the morning, but not much that accumulates. We'll have more about that in a few more minutes.
All right, thank you, Bob. North Dakota's bustling oil industry, not so much right now. Layoffs tied to the oil and gas industry in North Dakota, as many as 2,200 as of 1 week ago. The North Dakota Department of Mineral Resources says another 6,000 jobs are at risk as the industry reels from a sudden drop in both demand and price. The agency's new report out this morning shows North Dakota is still producing 1.4 million barrels of oil per day on average, but worldwide demand for oil has plummeted. Mineral Resources Director Lynn Helms says that other G20 nations have seen road traffic reduced by as much as 20 to 60% in light of the pandemic stay-at-home orders. Well, the Billings Clinic is asking the community for cloth mask donations to help prevent the spread of COVID-19 in patients, guests, and medical staff. Dr. Neil Koo explains the importance of using these masks, saying that they are an added form of precaution in preventing the wearer from spreading droplets while sneezing or coughing. Now, several groups, including a local Facebook group known as the Mask Crusaders of B-Town, have already come forward to help with the creation of these cloth mask substitutes. Tori Taylor, leader of the Crusaders group and a nurse at Billings Clinic, tells Q2 that the 700-plus members of the Crusaders have donated more than 1,000 cloth masks to local and surrounding medical facilities in a little over 3 weeks.
There are over 700 people in our group today, and we are all just folks who really care about our community. Right now, we're supporting our community by focusing on the healthcare worker and our frontline first responders, where if we get these cloth masks out, people who would normally buy prefabricated high filtration masks can use these in their areas, in the low risk areas, or as a cover, as I mentioned, for their high filtration mask so that they can reuse it. That way, our front lines and our first responders are able to have the prefabricated materials for their work with the high risk individuals.
And Taylor tells us that Office 360 Solutions is offered to serve as a drop-off area for the mask at their Billings location and other locations around the state. The Crusaders are currently asking for volunteers to serve as runners to pick up supplies. Well, still to come on tonight's 10 o'clock news, a homegrown business making Montanans proud and strong. That story in just a bit. Plus, this week's Takeout Tuesday is worthy of a standing ovation, but it may have you staggering out the door. We'll explain. And in sports, a blast from the past. Scott will introduce you to Q2's Athlete of the Week.
You're watching MTN News with Janelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.